Throughout history, there were warriors who didn't just fight, they terrified. Their names sparked fear. Their presence changed battles. They came from icy fjords, sun-baked deserts, endless steppes, and ancient forests. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were the most feared warriors in history. Today, we journey through centuries of blood and legend to uncover the warriors whose reputation alone could shake empires. Mongol horsemen. No force in history moved faster or struck harder than the Mongol Horde. Under the iron rule of Genghis Khan, they stormed across the plains of Asia like a plague. Born in the saddle, Mongol boys learned to ride before they could walk. Their horse archers were unmatched, firing volleys with deadly accuracy even at full gallop. They used feigned retreats, lightning raids, and psychological warfare. Entire cities surrendered without a fight, knowing resistance meant annihilation. By the mid-1200s, they had carved out the largest land empire in human history. From Beijing to Baghdad, their name alone inspired panic. Spartan warriors. Imagine a society where boys were torn from their families at 7 to train for one purpose: war. That was Sparta. Spartan warriors were bred to endure pain, embrace discipline, and never retreat. Their weapon? The phalanx formation, a wall of shields and spears that moved like a living beast. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans and their allies held off an army of tens of thousands. Not just a battle, it became a legend. Their code was simple: victory or death. And for their enemies, facing Spartans meant facing soldiers who feared neither. Viking raiders. From the cold shores of Scandinavia came a people who lived for conquest: the Vikings. They were not just warriors, they were seafarers, explorers, and raiders. Their longships could strike without warning, deep into enemy territory, along coasts and rivers no one thought vulnerable. Villages, monasteries, even cities crumbled beneath their axes. But their terror didn't come from numbers, it came from fury. Viking berserkers were said to fight in a trance-like rage, immune to pain. To Christian Europe, they were the scourge of God. But to the Norse, death in battle meant glory in Valhalla. Samurai. Precision. Honor. Death before disgrace. The samurai of feudal Japan lived by a strict warrior code: Bushido. They trained relentlessly, not just in swordsmanship, but in poetry, philosophy, and strategy. The katana, their signature blade, was more than a weapon, it was the soul of the samurai. These warriors were terrifying not because they were brutal but because they were utterly committed. A samurai would end his own life through seppuku rather than live in shame. In battle, they were elegant, efficient, deadly. For centuries, they stood as the dominant military class of Japan, feared by friend and foe alike. Zulu warriors. In the heart of southern Africa, a military genius rose: Shaka Zulu. He transformed tribal warriors into one of the most feared fighting forces on the continent. Gone were the throwing spears, replaced by the short stabbing ikalwa. Gone were loose skirmishes, replaced by disciplined, aggressive formations. Shaka's bullhorn tactic crushed enemies, flanking them from the sides, overwhelming them at the center. In 1879, the Zulu shocked the world by annihilating a modern British army at Asandlawana, using nothing but shields, spears, and unbreakable resolve. Knights Templar. They were monks. They were warriors. And they were feared across the Holy Land. The Knights Templar were a medieval military order who blended piety with battlefield prowess. Sworn to poverty and faith, they fought with brutal efficiency during the Crusades. Their white mantles and red crosses became symbols of divine wrath. They held fortresses, led charges, and defended pilgrims with religious zeal. But their power became their downfall. Betrayed, hunted, and disbanded, yet their legacy lives on, shrouded in mystery and blood. The Janissaries. They were taken as children, converted, trained, transformed into elite soldiers. The Janissaries were the iron fist of the Ottoman Empire. The first standing army in Europe, they mastered firearms and shock tactics centuries ahead of their time. Loyal only to the Sultan, they stormed cities, broke sieges, and marched in perfect unison. Even European generals feared the sound of Janissary drums in the distance. They were precision, power, and above all, unstoppable. Apache warriors. In the deserts of North America, one name echoed through military camps: Apache. These native warriors knew the terrain like no one else. Masters of stealth, tracking, and guerrilla tactics, they could vanish into the land and reappear where least expected. U.S. cavalry forces often found themselves outmaneuvered, outlasted, and humiliated. Leaders like Geronimo became symbols of resistance and fear. You couldn't prepare for an Apache attack. You couldn't chase them. You couldn't stop them. They were the land itself, untamed and lethal. Ninjas. While samurai fought in the open, another kind of warrior operated in the shadows, the ninja. Shrouded in secrecy, these covert agents of feudal Japan specialized in sabotage, espionage, and assassination. Trained in disguise, infiltration, and silent killing, they were the ghosts of war. Their weapons were unconventional, throwing stars, smoke bombs, grappling hooks. But their greatest weapon? Fear. You never knew when they would strike. Or how. To powerful warlords, the ninja were not just enemies, they were nightmares. Across centuries and continents, these warriors rose and fell. Some fought for gods, others for kings, some for honor, others for survival. What unites them is not just their ferocity but the impact they left behind. They weren't just fighters, they were forces of nature. Today, their weapons may lie in museums, their names etched in history. But their legacy lives on in the stories we tell, and the fears they once inspired.